Okay. Nishmat Avigdor Chayavim ben Rachalea Meir Tzvi, Shemash Ben Aliyah. It was just his parsha this past week, and forever will be ingrained in my memory, of course, that I actually started teaching him the parsha, and someone else took over, or whatever. I have just a funny story. I don't know if I ever told you this story, actually, but I just told some the other day. We would sit outside Bnei Shmuel to learn. Most of the time, like the students, I learned outside Bnei Shmuel, but lately it's been inside, whatever, makes no difference. So he's sitting on a bench facing uphill, and I'm sitting in a chair facing towards the park. And a few people walk by, and everyone, oh, hi, how you doing? He says, do you know everybody? Fine. Just after he said that, a bus came by, and I had the bus driver. I waved to the bus driver. He waved. He says, you know everybody, even the bus drivers. So when I sit outside, which is often, I think about that story. Yep. Anyways, okay. So we're going to finish up one last line we're in Pirke Gimel, chapter 3, Mishne, probably Yud Gimel or 17, 12, 13, 17, which just the only line you need to know right now is Siag lechochma shtika. We're going to talk about that for a few minutes, which literally means a preventive measure for wisdom is silence. Now, in that same Mishnah, everything else had a different perspective. It said, Siag, it said, here, let me take a look at it. So I'll do it by heart. So they keep it. Okay. Masoret Siag the Torah. The Masoret, the way we keep the proper way of the way the Torah is written, is a safeguard to keep the Torah the same way every generation. The Masrot are a Siag to give someone osher, to riches, and person who makes promises or darim is a siag for prishut, for separating and become more holy, so to speak. But then it should have said siag, shtika, siag l'chochma. The way it should have been written is that the act of shtika is in fact a preventive measure for chochma, for wisdom. The truth is that it can't say that because there's so much else that goes into chokhmah, into wisdom. The idea of silence, which we're going to talk about today for more than just a couple of minutes, is there's many more components that go into this. Now, as a person can be careful in not speaking too much, and we'll explain what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the biggest chacham in the world. But the other things do, in fact, lead to that stage of whether it's prishut or it's whatever else that was mentioned in the Mishnah. So that's just kind of like a technical comment. I would say that, and I've had the opportunity over the years to talk with, Baruch Hashem, hundreds of couples, newlyweds, married many years and all. And there are a handful of things. This isn't a chiddush of mine whatsoever. It's not something new that I'm saying. It's just pretty much fact that there are a few things that tend to be the stressors in a marriage or causes of problems. It could be money. It could be sex. It could be communication. It could be those are usually religion, but not as widespread. Talking as far as no, I'd say it definitely is an issue and comes up with some. But I'm saying as far as like the top three, for sure, those. So, but I would also add to that under the subcategory of communication, and that is the statement of siag lechochma shtika, that a fence, a guard that acts, that helps you to get to the point of wisdom is keeping your mouth quiet. What does that mean in terms of married life, in terms of friendship, in terms of many, many things? That is a lot of smiling here, right? Myself included. The more, I want to say this nicely, just keep your mouth shut. That's also 3 top motives for murder. That's correct. Yes. Oh, wait, you mean marriage? No. It was too easy. Sorry. Some decided. In any case, so what I think I want to make sure is very clear up front is that on the one hand, when it comes to, again, friendships, marriage, parent, child, siblings, communication is extremely important. You have to sometimes say what you need to say. And by the way, a good way, let's say you have something to say to somebody, you're nervous, you don't want to say it because you're afraid to hurt their feelings, how are they going to take it? You can always start off with the expression of, look, this is not easy for me to say. I'm really uncomfortable with this myself, and I know it might hurt you, but I want you to do me a favor. Just listen. Hear me out, and then we can discuss. But I need to say this. So you put the other person a little bit more of a listening on guard, but also in a listening mode. So communication is really important because what happens is when people don't, this is all part of this topic, by this is not off topic at all. What happens when you don't communicate and you don't say what's on your mind, and then maybe it's a year, 2 years, 10 years where it's all being held inside, and finally it explodes. And it might have been something that could have been avoided. And by the way, sometimes it's an absolute complete misunderstanding. I'll tell you, I won't say it was my family, someone else's family. As they say in Chinese, Maisa Shahaya. This is a thing that happened. There's a family I know in the United States. The nuclear family is religious. The sister of the father, the aunt of the kids, wasn't religious. And they were what's the word? Estranged, thank you. They were estranged for many, many, many years. from that family, right. And the sister for many, many years didn't really talk, not, oh, I don't talk to them, but didn't really communicate, didn't talk, didn't anything, because she was under the impression that the family, her brother and their kids, didn't approve of her because she wasn't religious. Her brother got sick and started contacting the family, specifically the sons and the daughters of this man. And after a while, the communication started, and it came out that the aunt or the sister said, like, I just want you to know, this is weird for me because we haven't talked for so many years. Now my brother's sick. I'm glad we're talking. It says, I know you didn't particularly care for the fact that I'm not religious and da 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 da. And I don't remember if it was the mother or one of the daughters said to her, what are you smoking? What are you talking about? She had gone years not wanting to really talk to the family because she felt that the family looked at her wrong. You know, oh, you're the non-religious one. But I know this only because the family came to talk to me afterwards. But for years and years they were estranged, and since then they've had an unbelievable relationship. Thank God. Whether it's a marriage, whether it's parent-child, whether it's siblings, communication. The flip side of that, siag l'chochma shtika. Not everything that's in here that you think needs to come out of your mouth. First of all, thank God, people can't read each other's minds. That's a bracha. It would be an absolute, can you imagine? It would be an absolute disaster. Wait, just a minute, Joel. Okay, good. You didn't. That too. So, Siyag Chochmah Shtitka is not just a nice idea that you can get wiser by keeping quiet. And we'll see how that works. It's also a great key in relationships. It really is. Now, again, there are times you have to speak up. Kohelet himself said, I have it here somewhere in my notes. Hold on, I won't say it by heart. There's a time to be silent. There's a time to speak up. We just saw this. I mentioned this in the class the other night. I think about Korach, that one of the biggest problems and mistakes Korach in the time of Korach was, and I think this is what Avram even said in his bar mitzvah, was that the average person in the street didn't say a word. No one spoke up for Moshe. No one spoke up for Aaron. No, well, how dare you talk to them like that? Nobody. So there are times you really do need to speak up. Okay, let's come back to this now for a few minutes. This whole topic of Siyag l'chochmah shtika. Take a look at it from a little bit of a different perspective, and have a broader idea of what we're really talking about. There's an expression in English: it's better to keep your mouth shut and appear like a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. That's true. There's one approach. I'll read you the expression. You shouldn't respond to something that you don't know the answer to properly. And by being silent, a person is recognized as being a chacham. What does that mean? I am sure it's happened to every one of us. Do you know how to get to here? Do you know what time is this at? And we throw out an answer out, right? And And about 5 minutes later, oh, hey, I sent that person the wrong way. Oh, no, it's tomorrow. No, it's at 2 o'clock, not at 10 o'clock. So we don't think sometimes, right? But by being quiet or by saying, I don't know, then just, okay, I respect that. I'd rather hear someone say, I don't know. I have people, it happens to me, I can't say every day, but often. People's personal message with a question. I said, great question. I don't know. I'll look into it. Instead of my saying, here's the answer, which I will, hopefully, if I know it, but there's no reason to jump. Now, where do I see is my biggest role model for that idea? Rabbeinu Shlomo Yitzchaki Dahainu Rashi. Rashi was the genius in Tanakh and Talmud as well, but let's talk about Tanakh. That he wrote, the genius of Rashi was not just what he said, but how he said it. As few words as possible. And a handful of times he said, Eineni yodea, I don't know. If Rashi can say I don't know, Zev Shandler can say I don't know. There was a person, I may have told this before, there was an old Yekisha Jew who was a member of our shul. Brilliant, he was a Talmud Chacham. He knew a lot, but it came to grammar and things like that. He was a genius. Rabbi Zupnik. Remember Rabbi Zupnik? Okay, so his opinion was that when Rashi said Eineni Yodea, he knew, but he didn't have a source to prove his point. And if he didn't have a source to prove his point, I don't know. So I thought that's also genius. So why is it that this idea of silence is a fence or safeguard for wisdom? Because again, we'll talk about what the purpose of a fence was, is to safeguard that which is inside, not something should get out, something shouldn't get in that doesn't belong there. Wisdom is internal. In other words, I could meet somebody on the street who I do not know. Person could be an absolute genius. I would not know that. You can't, if you look at someone and say, oh, they're good looking, they're not good looking, they're tall, they're short, they're whatever they might be, but you don't know what's in here right away, especially if they're quiet. So wisdom is internal and speech is external, right? You then reveal what you do or do not know. When I came across an expression, it's not really an expression, whatever, a phrase, I liked it a lot. When speech overflows, the wisdom leaks out and becomes diluted, which I love that statement. Like, just, yeah. That's, I don't have to say any more to that. Back to here. So the Rambam tells us, Rov HaChochma, the good majority of wisdom, or a sign of wisdom, is shtika. It means that being quiet, you are, unfortunately, there are people who are very smart who want you to know that. They want you to know the first thing you will meet them, they want you to understand how smart they are. You will very often find that in a narcissistic personality. A person is a narcissist, you know where that comes from? Narcissus looked at his shadow, his reflection in the water, and fell in love with himself. The narcissus, and he was narcissist. So narciss, Uzi Narkis. He's not a narcissist. No, that was his family name. Yeah. I also, when I saw that the first time, what? Uzi the narcissist? No, that's his family. Narkis. Mishne says, or just give a couple psukim. Gam evil machavish chacham yechashev. Even a fool who remains silent is considered wise. Sitting at a table with people you don't know, you come to a wedding, and there have been people at the table. One person has to be very smart. One person's just like, just as they say, not the brightest crayon in the box. So, if you ask, let's say someone brings up a hypothetical question, a philosophical question, and the guy who's there just going, the person who's not all there says, wow. Now, you don't know what that wow means. I don't understand what you're talking about. Okay, so now I'll show you a little the shtuyot that sits in this brain. I was a very big fan of MASH, a TV show. And in the show, there's Corporal O'Reilly, he's a macher. He's always trying to gain people to do things, but he wants to go on a date with a woman in the army. And he doesn't know how to deal with women, how to talk to them. So one of his friends says to him, when the woman says something to you, all you should say is, that's highly significant. And that is stuck in my head for 40 years. And I've actually heard someone once in a while say that expression, not on purpose from there, but said, oh, radar, right? That was the name of his character. So it is that a fool, you don't know he's necessarily a fool until he opens his mouth. So even a fool can appear to be smart by keeping their mouth quiet. Again, the true wisdom is in understanding the appropriate time to speak. I know I've said this before, but again, I don't remember what context. A man I knew who passed away a year and a half ago, his son said at his levaya, and I've quoted it so many times that it was absolutely brilliant. Never miss an opportunity to be silent. And I thought that's very insightful. I actually messaged him a few months ago, that this son, who was a former student of mine also, to tell him how I thought that was so great. He says, yeah, I use that all the time. He says, and it sounds like it's good advice for others, but it's good advice to yourself, right?
I'm just thinking,
yes.
It is great advice, but like I'm thinking it's not always great advice for like when you're for students and stuff. Like you want those students.
Oh, no. I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that in a minute, actually. Okay. There's another opinion that says, shotek mochlino akol avonotav. If someone remains silent in the face of insult, let's say someone says something to you, insult you. Now the Rambam says you shouldn't be completely adish. You shouldn't be completely, I don't know how to say it in English. Person like apathetic. That's maybe not the right word, but like you don't care. Non-reactive is a different word actually, but adish is not. It's more like being apathetic. You have to react, but maybe. But you don't. You have to think before you react, which is sometimes very difficult to do. But sometimes the best thing to do is to keep silent. There's a whole. I didn't give this shir, but I've heard many shirim about this topic about when you are insulted and you keep your mouth quiet and you're ma'avir midotav. You kind of say, okay, you know what? I don't care. Then Hashem will say, you know what? I know he insulted me too. Just like he's ma'avir midotav, he literally means he passes over his midot, his character traits, and says, who cares? I'll do that for him too. That's also an important point. We come to your point right now also. One thing that always has to be encouraged, that is the search for knowledge. Okay, have a good day. Always have to know the search for knowledge. And that means asking questions. That means being not afraid to say an answer when it might be completely wrong and people are going to laugh at you. Imagine it's 13th century and someone says there's these tiny things you can't see that go from hand to hand and into your mouth and get you sick. Oh, please. Right? And then suddenly they discover germs. There are so many things that we don't know today. And by the way, you realize anytime you live is the most modern time of history. You never realized that. When the person lived in the 13th century, that was the most modern time of history. And the most modern medicine, technology, everything. Backwards people. Anyways, so not even 500 years, in 50 years from now, what we have when it comes to communications and computers and travel, it's going to seem like so. Just think back. Everyone here knows the days. Floppy disks. Think back to the first computers that had maybe 1 gig of a hard drive. That was a lot of space. The telephone, if it was attached to the wall or it was a big heavy black thing. You missed a TV show, you missed it. That's it. You didn't see it, it's over. It's gone. There's no recording a TV show. And that's just in the last 40, 50 years, right? Imagine that the speed with which things are moving. By the Chavetz Chaim says you're going to know one of the signs of Mashiach coming is just like Erev Shabbat. Things start to speed up at crazy speeds. So that's 6,000 years till Mashiach, first he gives 1,000 years tohu vavohu, and 2,000, I don't remember exactly the number. So that during the 6,000th year, which we're in now, we're in 5785, that it's the equivalent of Erev Shabbat. And things start getting faster and faster and faster and faster. That's the sign Mashiach is coming. So Bezrat Hashem. Missiles also getting faster. Yeah, good point. But it's really, I'm glad you said it, Yocheved. It's really important. Whether it's our own kids, our spouses, our friends, our students, whoever it might be, do not ever it should never be silent. You have to ask, you have to talk. I have a general rule that I tell all my students, a few things. And one is, if I ask you a question and you answer in a nanosecond, I don't know, I don't accept that. It means I don't know, I'm too lazy to think, you tell me. I said, I won't accept it. I said, well, I tried. I said, how did you try? But it took you 1 billionth of a second to say, I don't know. Your brain doesn't work that fast. No one's does. Okay, fine. Then they think. And you want to know something? Half the time they come up with something. It may be right, it might be wrong, but they come up with something. But if they do think and they don't know, then I'm happy to help. Think for yourself. It's really important too. The Chavetz Chaim tells us in Shmirat HaLashon, Ein midah shemevi'ah et hadam lidei kedusha kemo hashtika. He says one of the best ways to raise your level of kedusha is being careful with your speech, is the general way, but being quiet, meaning not talking lashon hara. Even when you talk good about things, also measuring your words. I have never seen a source for the following statement, but it seems like everyone learns this from their kids. I've never, if you know a source, please tell me. Hashem determines at the beginning of our lives how many words we're going to speak in our lifetime. And when we run out of words, we're done. Now, that doesn't include Torah. Just like the amount of money we spend doesn't have an effect on our ultimate bottom line at the end of the year when we spend money on smachot and Shabbat and Chagim. But the words we speak, the words that are not Torah related, there's a finite amount that we're not allowed or given. Now, how do we earn more? I've never, if you can find it, I really, you search for it and let me know. I don't know where it is. Rabbi Nachman from Breslov says, Moran, we are about to learn about him in Jewish history this week or next week. He actually connects silence with emunah, with faith. He says sometimes we have to be silent in the place of suffering. Where do we learn that? By Yidom Aharon. Aaron learns that his 2 sons died. Now, is Aaron Adish? Is he like, I don't care, he's apathetic? God forbid. But at that moment, there was nothing to say. And on that note, I want to tell you, Klal Gadol, really strong rule, that has to do with a shiva house. I've seen it too many times. I'm going to write a book, not a book, like a booklet of proper etiquette in a shiva house. And it's kind of, if you read the article I just wrote recently, it was actually anonymous. Well, I guess it's not anonymous now. An article I wrote about it's called You Don't Understand, about people living chutzar saying to us, oh, we understand what you're going through. You can never say that to anybody. I understand. Even Mr. X loses his father and Mr. Y loses his father. You cannot say, I know how you feel, because you don't. You didn't have that relationship. You don't have that experience. You can say, I feel for you. Is there something I could do for you? Never, ever, ever say, I know how you feel. Not even 2 parents, God forbid, whose children have died in war or in any other situation. Never. You can be sympathetic, you can be empathetic, you could feel, but never say, I know how you feel. Not even for your own flesh and blood, because it's not true. You don't. And that's another siyag l'chochma shtika. One more statement from Rav Kook. Hashtika ha'pnimit hi mekor ha'tevuna. Inner silence is the source of understanding. What does that mean? There's one aspect of being quiet, and that is I don't want to say anything because it's not worth the argument, or whatever it might be. The other is when you're quiet, your brain has a chance to focus and to think. There's somebody I had a conversation with this week. One of the most difficult family discussions I have had in many years is very difficult. And there was one question that was left hanging at the end, and it was a young woman in her 20s, and the parents were trying to make her understand something. And I gave her like a homework assignment. Okay, I want you to figure out the difference between X and Y, so that'll help work things out with your parents. And she messaged me yesterday. She said, I don't know how to do it. I can't, I don't know what to do. I told her, go to a park, go sit outside, put your phone off, just look around, breathe, and kind of shut your mind off a little bit. Every one of us have been in situations where you just kind of need to disconnect. And when you disconnect, and it's the theory behind hitvodedut, spending time alone, just contemplating God, contemplating life and everything else that you have been zochet to in life, your brain opens up. We have an unbelievable power in our minds. I don't remember who said it. I saw it not that long ago that if all the scientists with everything we have now today it was a scientist I was reading from, that tried to replicate the human brain, it would take hundreds of millions of years to be able to build something that actually replicates the human mind and brain, because it can't. Oh, wait. Probably my wife, not sure. So we shortchange ourselves. We think that we can't do something when if we have shtika, if we're quiet, both at the outside and the inside, our chokhmah, our wisdom can grow. I don't know if any of you are math. I'm not a math person. I'm pretty sure 2 + 2 is 4. I hope. I'm not a math person, but there are things that I'm pretty good at, things that I know I'm not good at. But if I'm coming up with an issue or a problem, what I personally found is exactly what I told this girl. I put the phone aside, which is not easy for me. I'll put the phone aside. I'll sit myself in the house. If I'm alone, I'll go to a park. I'll take a walk and breathe and think. And when you do that, it opens your mind. And that's again, Siag Chochmah Shtika. Okay, let's start with the next Mishnah. Okay. So we are on Mishnah in Pirke Gimel, chapter 3, Mishnah either 14 or 18. Let's find it here. Okay, move this here and this here. Okay. Well, see, now I see that Susie, I wasn't looking for it. Susie's online. I think it's also very important to mention what she does in life also partially is mindfulness and these workshops and like focus and concentrate. I think that, if that's something you're interested in, I would highly recommend talking with Susie. Very much so.
In order to think, you have to shut off the noise.
In order to think, you have to shut off the noise. I'll tell you something funny. Not funny, haha, but a couple days ago, I go a couple mornings a week to Yeshiva Birkat Moshe. It's part of my retirement plan to go to Birkat Moshe, and I sit and learn there. And there's a main Beit Midrash, and then there's a Nezrat Nashim, like a couple steps up, and I usually sit back there, not to sit at someone's table or something. And there's a man, a woman, and I guess the woman's sister or something that came in to observe, because I think they're looking to make a donation. And Rav Aviner was going to be showing them around. They're standing right behind me, Israelis, and born Israeli, because we're all Israeli. And she said in Hebrew, said, how do people focus in here? How do they concentrate? And he gave this big smile, and he gave whatever answer he was going to give. And I had an answer I would give myself, and I understood the question. Like, you go to Beit Midrash, it's not quiet. But what are you talking about? Rabbah says, he doesn't mean you crazy, but you learn Aleph Beis, even though it's a Beit Midrash. There's a lot of yelling and screaming and quotes. There's a lot of people get into it, and it's beautiful. That's why I can sit learn home. I do, but it's different being in a Beit Midrash in environment. But for some people, especially if you're ADD, ADHD, if you have attention deficit issues like that, it can be very challenging. There's no question about it. So where was I going with this? What did you ask me? What did you say? God. Oh, you have to have quiet, right? To quiet the voices. So for some people, right, in order to think, you have to quiet the voices. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's learning, sometimes whatever, right, walking, whatever works for you, you'll learn it from trial and error. Okay, next Mishnah says, Hu Haya Omer. This is Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is the last Mishnah, and when it says the next Mishnah, Hu Haya Omer, refers to the prior one, it's Rabbi Akiva. I'm going to read it and kind of translate, but not the whole thing. If you have English, feel free to just look along. Hu Haya Omer. Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Man is, how does he translate Chaviv? I'm curious. Beloved. Good. Man is beloved, not humans are beloved. And we're not going to get to it today, but we'll see what humans he's referring to. Is it the Jews? Is it like people who wear a black hat? Is it all humanoids? We'll see. Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem. Man, humans are, I'm just going to translate like that now, are beloved because they are created in the image of God. In addition to that, an additional level of belovedness or love was known to man because they by God, that they were created in his image. He created man in the image of God. Next statement. Chavivin Yisrael, Jews. Now, wait a minute. Maybe the first statement does refer to all humans. It may, because Adam was just a human. He wasn't Jew. Noach wasn't Jewish. Avram was the first Jew. So maybe we're going to have to come back. We're going to have to qualify this. I'm leaving it open. Next statement. Chavivin Yisrael, sheniku banim lamakom. Jews are beloved because they're called the children of God. But aren't all humans the children of God? And they also were informed about this extra love, that we are called children of Hashem. It's a pasuk in Dvarim. Chavivin Yisrael. It's another statement about the Jews. The Jews are beloved. That the Jews were given. How does it translate kli chemda? Utensil of precious instrument, a precious article. Good. Okay. A precious article, which means the Torah. And also, and this speciality was known to them. It was given to them, this special utensil with which the world was actually created. Shenemar, ki lekachto datati lachem, torati al ta'azovu. That's the pasuk about the gift that Hashem gave, referring to his Torah. Okay. There are 3 levels mentioned in this Mishnah. And again, I'm just going to take pshat. Pshat just means the simple translation. No depth yet. Number 1, it talks about humans. Number 2, it talks about Bnei Yisrael in general. And then it talks about those who are Jews and also are keeping Misorah, who are keeping Torah mitzvot. It's a subcategory of category number 2. It's not meant as a pat on the back. It's not like, whoa, we are so cool. We are the best. Well, we are. That's a different story. It's not for show. It's not for showing off. That's not what it's for. It's the more we understand our value, the more careful we are with ourselves. What does that mean? If you have a diamond ring, I don't. If you have a diamond ring and you have a star sapphire and you have whatever else it might be, just some little thing a shell you picked up at the beach. They obviously have different values, and you're going to treat them differently as far as how you're going to keep them, where you're going to keep them, wear them, not whatever it might be, how you're going to relate to the value. The same is true with people in interpersonal relationships, right? Way you relate to your immediate family versus your neighbors or your friends that live in a different country. It's different. It's not the same. Each one may be of great value. Each one is of great value, but the closer something is to you, the more valuable, in quotes, that person is. So what that does is, the greater we understand our value, it instills in us, says Rabbi Akiva, the more that we're beloved in the eyes of Hashem, and the more we're going to want to serve Hashem, please Hashem, in quotes. And that really does jive exactly with what Rabbi Akiva said in the prior Mishnah, of these siyagim, all these protective measures. Why are they there? They're to protect us from ourselves, but at the same time, it's really for us to serve Hashem properly. What does it mean to protect us from ourselves? That we don't do something we shouldn't do. And why don't we want to do it? Or either it's because, in Hebrew it's or, so it becomes in English too. Either you serve Hashem out of yirah, awe and fear, which is the one level, or it's ahava, which you talked about many, many times, especially in Siyat Sharim, or it's out of love. And it's much better to serve Hashem out of love. So the more you understand your value, by the way, and I'm not saying this is a joke, for a lot of people, that's very difficult. For a lot of people who go through life feeling, I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm nothing of this, it's a and forget religion for a minute, just for themselves, it's a very hard mountain to climb that a person has to understand and learn their self-respect and self-worth, because everyone has some form of value. Everybody has. I could prove it to you that the end of Sefer Vayikra has the section called Arachim, the whole section about when a person says in the time Beit HaMikdash, I decide to donate my value to the Beit HaMikdash. And there's a certain amount given for a man, for a woman, for an adult, a child. And there is a value to every single person, and that's a monetary value. But I'm not even talking about that now. I'm talking about a worth, because if you did not have a reason to be in this time period, you wouldn't exist right now. Think about that. That's the Kutzker. It says Hashem, the day you were born is the day that Hashem decided you need to be in this world. Now, it's not only that, it goes even further than that. The other night, we were supposed to have a class on Sunday night. Started the class, and somehow my notes got blown to smithereens. Couldn't find them. So plans changed. Pushed it off to Monday. Every interaction that you had with somebody else from that 7 to 7:45 that evening, then, if you were going to be in that class, was not an expected interaction, but it was Hashem needed you to have that interaction. It could be as simple as just, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you something, or calling somebody, or writing something down, whatever it might have been. That was not your plan A. That was your plan B. It was Hashem's plan A. That's what he needed. That's why I couldn't find my notes. That's how I look at these things. That's why I don't get upset and crazed about something. The only time I did, this was pretty fun. It's actually really contradiction in terms. Last year, Pesach, not this Pesach, a year and a half ago, whatever, Pesach, I was the so-called scholar in residence in Yerushalayim at the Vert Hotel, right by the airport. Tachan Merkazit, through AACI. Don't ask me that. I used to work near the airport for many years, and still my brain, I say near the. And there was a talk I was about to give like that afternoon, and I thought it was boring. I said, I'm not going to give that. And there's a different one I want to give, the one I've given a number of times on anger. But I didn't have my notes. I'm a bus ride, literally a 174 bus ride home. I come home, and I can't find it. And I'm going, where the heck is it? I'm alone in the house. And I'm pulling stuff out. And I stopped, and I burst out laughing. I'm looking about a speech that's going to explain to people how to be calm, and I'm getting all upset that I can't find it. And I said, okay, I get it. Just like that. So, okay, you also can't take yourself too seriously in life, but it has to be an awareness of your value of this idea. So the more you are aware of yourself and the value you have in this world, the more careful you are also with the kavod of somebody else. You're more respectful of somebody else's honor and the way you have to treat that person. Let's assume for a moment that a berez, like a spout that's coming out of by a sink, has a brain. Now, right now, we know it's an inanimate object. It doesn't understand what it does. It's a piece of metal. So it's not like saying like, wow, I'm really good at this. It has no idea. But let's assume for a moment a berez understands what its function is. Say, oh, okay, this is my function. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. As the water's flowing and it gets stopped up, then they'll have to call Shandalov son-in-law and clean it up. But it'll understand, okay, oh, that's my function. Okay, that's what I'm doing. This is what I'm here for. Hey, what do you polish me once in a while, make me look nice, you know? When we're aware of our self-worth, when we are aware that this is what I'm here for, I'm here in this world to, yes, to be a good person, to be a good husband and father and grandfather, neighbor and friend and teacher, whatever else it might be. But ultimately, I'm here to be an Eved Hashem. Ana avda de kucha brichu. It says in Brich Shemay, I am a servant of Hashem. I used to have that. I wrote that years ago. One of the Sidurim I used. Ana avda de kucha brichu. That's what defines us. I am a servant of Hashem, not a slave. The word Eved doesn't mean, it does mean a slave in some context, but there's a very big difference between a slave and a servant. We're servants of Hashem. Slaves is a completely different thing because slaves don't have their own free choice. We do. It's one of the biggest differences. In any case, so if the bearers would understand, if the spout, the spigot would understand its tafkid, they would be more apt to work on making sure that they did their tafkid. We who do have a brain, that we can figure what is our tafkid. How do we know what our job here in this world is? How do we know? No, it's not like God sends us a little note, a little petek, and says, like, here it is. This is what your job is. This is what you have to accomplish in life. So I wouldn't say struggle, but I've discussed this over the years with many people. And what seems to be the common thread in all the things I've read is that where you find you're drawn to the most, I obviously was not brought into this world to be an accountant. And your client should thank me because they'd be all in jail probably. That's not what I was brought into this world for. I can see and understand my tafkid. I've had so many people after made Aliyah ask me, if you're so much into Aliyah, what took you so many years to make Aliyah? And it was a question that I didn't find it insulting. I understood the question. You're so Mr. Aliyah, well, get up and do it. But my answer became over the years that I saw in hindsight why we came when we did. Because I needed a certain background, both in the business world, then in the rabbinic world, before I can come here and continue whatever it is I have the chance and opportunity that Hashem has given the zechut to do. Sometimes we only understand our tafkid in hindsight. Sometimes we see what you're drawn to. Some people are drawn to specific mitzvot. Rabbi Yisrael Reisman Shlita has I still call it a tape, has a tape called My Favorite Mitzvah. He says that we have 600, no one does all, you can't, there's no one person who can do all 613 mitzvot. We have X amount of mitzvot we all can do. And most of us hopefully do a good percentage of it. But there's certain ones somehow people connect to more than others. He says, take that mitzvah, hone in on it, and do it the best way possible. I'm making up one now, right now. Let's say someone for some reason really connects to the mitzvah of mezuzah. It's not that you do it all the time, but they're really into mezuzah. So make sure you find out, go to the sofer, watch him write the mezuzah, understand, learn how the letters are written, whatever. Take it to the nth degree and get into it. Maybe it'll spill into another mitzvah. Same thing is true when we talk about our tafkid, our job here in this world, that we find what we're drawn to. Maybe someone has a good ear. They just like to listen to people. Maybe somebody is into providing a great simcha for other people, right? And that brings joy. The ability to bring joy to people's life with food is magnificent. So, and you hone in on that. That makes a big difference in the kavod you're showing for another person. And why do we do that? Not just for the income. Of course, the income is important, but it's also if it's a job. But it's also because it's a lot of for yourself. It's self-value, it's self-worth, and you're valuing the other person. And that's what this Mishne is in general going to be about. Bezrat Hashem, what we'll do next week, we'll get into these three statements to understand to whom it's really referring to, and also what's called kfilut lashon. There's a double language. Oh, I thought that was the at the beginning it sounded like like the pre-warning. Yeah, I mean run home, but walk home and have to even run. That there's a double language here, it seems, says, okay, that it says that man is chaviv before Hashem because he created B'Tselem Elokim. And Hashem let him know he was created B'Tselem Elokim. Why say both things? Like it seems to be, could have had 50% less there. So we'll see Bezrat Hashem next week. Welcome. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for the shout out, Zev.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure. That'll be 100 shekel. Thank you. Find your seat.